my experience with my parents' divorce was, I'm sure, for a while. Like, I definitely remember it being contentious for a few years, and them having stress and maybe not getting along. My dad, like, I remember him picking me up at the curb when it was tight. Like, there was a few years where it was like a little bit rough, but they always parented together. For you. In terms of, like, they respected each other's parenting styles.
Yeah.
And they always kind of worked together, even in their own difficulty.
Yeah.
Or maybe their own feelings towards one another. I never remember them really misaligning in that way.
Yeah.
So that was helpful. And they also lived really close together. And there was my dad at one point when my parents got divorced, my father at some point became, we started to become more successful. The business began to grow and he became more successful. And
trailer hitches were a hit.
Yeah. So the business grew. And at one point we had a lake house, which was very close to the house I grew up in.
Mm-hmm.
And so when my parents got divorced, and these were only like 5 miles apart, when my parents got divorced, my dad just took the lake house and my mom stayed at the house in town. And this is only 5 miles apart.
Right.
So I just bounced back and forth pretty equally between the two of them. They had 50-50. I would stay, like, I guess technically it was like week on, week off, but I could just kind of, as I got older, just kind of bounce back and forth from one house to the other.
Did you tend to stay more with your dad because you had a better connection with him?
I don't know if it was that or if it was because I could
He let you get away with more stuff?
I wouldn't say he would let me, but I probably did.
You just did.
Because my mom was on to everything. And that was probably why I battled, because in a small town, like, she was friends with the other moms and they would all talk. So, I mean, she was
getting in trouble in that small town?
Definitely. Yeah. When my parents got divorced, and I'll tell, I say this to my kids, is there was a point where, like, I started to hang out with the
wrong crowd,
that were making
bad choices.
Yeah, bad choices. And I definitely fell into that as a kid.
I did too.
Yeah. So there was
ADHD. ADHD, I think that impulsivity. Yeah. That, like, probably longing to belong.
Oh, yeah.
Wanting to belong, wanting to.
And I don't know. It was like, in my mind at the time, I didn't think I was doing anything that anybody else wasn't doing.
Right.
But I would get caught.
I got caught too.
I would get caught.
I'd get caught
and it
too.
Was like,
because I was so loud, I guess. Or just I wasn't good at being sneaky.
Well, I would say too that my mom, she knew what was up, and I wasn't a kid that tended to lie. Like, it was hard. I wasn't a good liar.
So when you'd lie, it'd be very obvious.
Yeah, or like, it just, for whatever reason, the plan would fall through. So there was a couple experiences, where I got in trouble. Mm-hmm. I'm not afraid to talk about that either. It's kind of, for me,
legal trouble, or
yeah, like, I got busted for drinking.
Okay.
At a young age.
I got busted.
I was like 15. I got an MIP. Minor in possession.
We'd pull hey misters. Did you do hey misters up there?
I don't know what that is.
Hey mister, will you buy me a 6-pack of beer?
Oh.
Here's $20. You can keep the extra.
I mean, I think for us it was just, it was a combination of things. Sometimes there were parents that would allow it.
Oh, your parents would buy the beer.
Not mine.
Yeah,
definitely
some parents.
Not mine. But I was hanging out with kids whose parents were maybe more open to that. They were more so they were more open to that. And then, and I had definitely it wasn't really like my older siblings or anything, but
definitely not them.
My friends' siblings.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
when my brother turned 21, I turned 21, right? Because I got his extra driver's license.
Yeah. So
yeah.
So what I would say is, you
got in some trouble. You had fun.
It was one of those experiences too, where it was, I got busted a second time. I was 17.
Mm-hmm.
I think I was 17. It was my senior year of high school. And my dad told me very specifically, you get in trouble again, I'm not paying for college.
Whoa.
And that was like.
With another, was an MIP, another minor in possession?
It was at that point, like, I had gone through, like, getting my license taken away.
Oh, wow.
And having my license suspended.
Yeah.
So it was like a big deal.
It's like, we're not putting up with this anymore.
Were one of the best things that I would say that they did for me is they did not bail me out. They were not going to help me out.
They didn't?
Like, no. There was it was like, you're going to do the community service. You're going to go to the AA classes. I remember being like 15, going to AA for the first time with, being with a lot of adults and it's scaring the
You went to
hell out of me.
AA at
Yeah, it was
15?
required. I want to say it was, well, when you get in trouble at
It
that
was
age, like
part
it
of
was
the
part of the
okay.
process. And they made me do it, and it was a good thing
It was good
because
for you.
yeah, I think it was good for me because it held me accountable. I mean, I had to grow up fast. But I was accountable to my
I mean, you're in there
experience.
in the room with a bunch of cigarette smoking, like real
I mean, it
adult
was it was
addicts.
it was yeah, people that had destroyed their life. So it's definitely like
So that would
eye-opening.
be sobering for you.
Yeah. But it keep me from not making the same mistake again,
No, it didn't. No.
and then go off to college and I was still pushing boundaries and stuff. So,
Did you identify as a good kid or a bad kid?
that's such a good question. If you
Did you
were to
make good
ask me,
grades? Were you in like cheerleader?
so what I'll say is when I got in trouble for my first MIP, my first minor in
Mhm.
possession, I got kicked out of honor society, and that was super disappointing to my family. Like my parents, like they weren't super. I mean, there was an expectation. My dad always really valued education, and I generally got good grades, but I
Yeah.
wasn't like a 4-point student necessarily. And definitely but I was a good student. And I definitely like excelled up until I would say like seventh grade. And it aligns right at the time, like between my parents getting a divorce. And then I don't know. So you think about it and it's just like, was I just going through something emotionally that was causing me to kind of act out in these
Or if you were
ways?
going through something socially.
Yeah, social. Well, I think it was all of the above,
Yeah.
right? I definitely don't blame my parents for it. I think it's just part of the experience of
Yeah.
trying to work out your emotions through an already difficult adolescent time.
Yeah. Not knowing how to move through that
Yeah.
and doing the best you can in a place at a time where probably both your parents were taxed.
Yeah.
I mean,
Oh,
they're
yeah.
going through a divorce. I'm a divorced
Yeah.
person, and it is an extremely taxing time emotionally,
Yeah.
cognitively, and that takes away from the energy and the attention that you can give to your kids.
Oh, for sure.
So there's a for lack of a better word, there's a deficit there
Mhm.
of attention and like quality
Yeah.
interactions.
Yeah.
And that's going to leave a void and a lot of confusion in a child.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, I don't know. I mean, over time, what I'll say is that I did feel this respect of my parents. They always respected each other even if they didn't get along, and
Hmm.
they had such different personalities. I always looked at them and thought like, how on earth did you two come together?
They
Because
were opposites.
they were so opposite. But they did, they did. I think that they really were aligned in terms of the values of family and what was important, and that I think helped them maintain that sense of respect even when they weren't together. So, you know, they showed up at everything together. There were lots of things that we did together. That it was like there was never like this separation between, if there was any family gathering or anything, like they did it.
They did it
They were
together.
at those events together and it wasn't problematic. I never felt that tension. Maybe early on, but later definitely not. I mean, my dad was with us at the hospital when my mom was sick and all that. So,
Hmm.
yeah.
Were you interested in psychology and therapy and stuff like that when you're in college? When did that start?
I mean, I think I always had a fascination with it. Definitely always was interested in self-development, self-improvement. I think when I took my first psychology class in college, that's probably when I found, okay, this is super interesting when you can start to understand the theoretical perspectives of why people behave the way that they do. Then I definitely became really interested. But the path that I actually chose, I ended up becoming an advertising major in college. And
Hmm.
I thought when I went to college, I thought I was going to be, I thought I wanted to be a journalist. I thought I was going to, I wanted to be on TV. I wanted to
Hmm.
be a reporter.
Hmm.
Um, which is so interesting. I don't know that I necessarily wanted to be on camera, but I wanted to be a reporter in some capacity.
Yeah.
Um, but then I got to college and I was like, I hate being under this pressure of deadline. I remember being in class and them giving us an assignment and just it was so difficult. I think about the ability to like think on your feet or have that witty humor. You have to have that as a reporter. You have to be able to really think quick. And one thing that I know about myself is that I process much more slowly. So that was not something that I was going to be successful at. Maybe I could have learned to adapt and learned maybe a different mechanism, but
You got the message that it
Yeah.
wasn't something you could do with your
I
processor speed.
Yeah, I think it was a processing speed issue because I was a really strong writer and I could definitely deliver ideas. But really, I pursued an advertising degree because I wanted to go into PR, public
Yeah,
relations. And
yeah.
that was like an emerging career at the time.
Which
And
seems very similar to
yeah,
psychology,
there
marketing.
is.
It's like, how do people think? What motivates people?
Absolutely. That's why for me, this is my second career because my first career was in public relations
Hmm.
prior to having kids, and I loved it. But there's so much psychology that goes into it. You know,
Yeah.
you're thinking about behaviors, you're thinking about why are people interested in what's motivating
Yeah.
someone towards that, all of that. So to me, when I started to think about what I wanted, it was actually my therapist that I had the idea in my mind of maybe becoming a therapist or wanting to do that, and I was kind of embarrassed.
Hmm.
Um,
You were
I was,
embarrassed
like, a little bit embarrassed to say that to my therapist.
that you want to be a therapist?
Yeah, I just felt like she might experience that as being awkward, like, I wanted to be like her or something because she was
Oh,
helping me so much. I
yeah.
had that feeling of, like, I can't tell her that I wanna do that.
Okay.
But it was actually my first therapist that she was my second therapist, but she was with me through the process of my divorce. Amazing therapist, and she was like, "No, you could be an excellent therapist. I believe that." And it was that validation of her seeing me in that way that was like, "No, you could I really think that you could be good at this." And then I started to see a pathway like seemed impossible,
Mm-hmm.
going through a divorce thinking, "Well, I actually started my graduate studies the semester before I found out I was getting a divorce."
Mm.
So I was already like
You're moving that
in
direction.
yeah, there's turmoil and stuff and it maybe was going in that direction. But my kids were getting older. And I think something that I struggled in an early motherhood was the sense of I was a worker. I really had I really loved to work. I loved the feeling that I got from being able to a lot of I think my sense of self-identity was tied to having a career that I loved. And that was really difficult when I became a mom is like, okay, how do I balance this conflict, this
Mm-hmm.
inner conflict between motherhood, seemingly feeling like, can this feeling and guilt that I had, the shame of like, is this enough? Like, still love this other thing too. And I will say that like that was a real struggle for me for a
Career and
while.
kids.
Yeah,
Can I
like
love
how
both
can
of
I
them?
live both of
How
them
could
without can I yeah, without like neglecting like these two children.
Mhm.
Um and I think I always struggled with that because well, for one, I don't think it was the opposite was modeled
You
for
did what
me,
your mom did.
so I definitely but it felt like more out of a necessity versus something I really loved the career that I was pursuing at the
Mm-hmm.
time. I found a lot of I loved doing PR.
Public
Which is
relations.
yeah, I
Yeah.
loved public relations and it kind of took me down some interesting pathways.
But at a certain point, you thought, therapy or helping people heal might be
Well,
more in alignment with.
I mean, I was home. So my path of how I moved into therapy also, it's like I moved from a career where I was living in Detroit as my first career out of college. I was working at Ford Motor Company in public affairs.
Mm-hmm.
And then that took me to Chicago. I relocated as a contract employee
Mm-hmm.
and worked in media relations had a great job, but then the auto industry was really struggling and I was a contract employee. So because I had established some relationships with the people in the media and they were our clients, they encouraged me to come on as an auto editor. So it was interesting because I actually did go back into journalism. I
Mm-hmm.
ended up working for Consumer Guide, which is an auto editor because they wanted to build their female presence. So I was here like working with all these gearheads, learning about cars and how to write about it. It was a great job.
Yeah.
I got to drive like two new cars every week, top of the line, like everything
That sounds
it was
fun.
so fun. And
And then you're writing about the cars that you're
yeah, and then you're
driving?
writing against the car. And the thing about Consumer Guide is it was really highly regarded because they didn't accept any advertising. So
That
there was
sounds
a sense of
fun.
like but at the time I was dating my kid's father.
Mm-hmm.
He actually helped me get that job. He was like, loves cars to this day. So he helped me write about it and get the job. But he was in Miami. And
Oh
so, and I
yeah.
was in Chicago. And we hit a crossroads where it was like, okay, this relationship is going one way or the other.
Long distance
Yeah.
relationship.
Yeah, it was long distance. And then I relocated. It was very fast. I mean, we dated, it was really quick, really hot and heavy. And then I relocated to Miami,
Mm-hmm.
so we got engaged, and then I relocated to Miami. And in Miami, that was when my PR career kind of got derailed because I was not fully bilingual, and if you're doing PR in a city like
The
Miami,
public
you
is
have to
bilingual.
be,
They
the
speak
public
Spanish.
it's the first language, nearly the first language. I mean, it was at the time, I think it was like 86% Latin.
So you needed to speak Spanish in order to relate to that public.
Oh yeah, to be able to, was conversational in
Yeah.
Spanish, but to be able to have the confidence to do that in business, there's just no way.
Oh
So
my goodness.
I ended up going into nonprofit, and that definitely was not the best fit for me, but that was what was available to me in Miami.
Mm-hmm.
But I never really got back on track. And then we ended up moving to Austin, 2007.
Mm-hmm.
So we moved out of Miami at the height of the market right before the crash. And we thought we were just going to we could not buy anything. It was just insane. I don't know if you've ever seen The Big Short.
I have.
Yeah. So it was just like
Yeah.
that. So we just thought, okay, well, Texas looks interesting and the economy seems like it's pretty stable. We'll just maybe invest over here and see how things calm down.
Mm-hmm.
And we ended up finding a place pre-construction. We built a house, but we kind of thought we weren't really we were kind of torn still on whether or not we were going to leave Miami. We just wanted to see how things shook out for a while. But then I ended up moving. We ended up just moving to Austin. We ended up just making the jump.
Making the move.
Mm-hmm. And that was a good decision at the time because the market took a long time for that market to recover. As you know, like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
you're coming to Austin. At this point, do you have kiddos?
2007, no kids.
Yeah. You and your
got
husband.
pregnant right away,
Yeah.
within the first year. Yeah. So at that point, I think that was really where I started to lose my sense of career, what I was going to do. Because at that time, then I was stepping into this role of being a mom.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was really interesting.
How did you guys grow apart? What happened there?
In the marriage?
Mm-hmm.
Oof.
You might not want to talk about it, and that's fine.
Yeah. I mean, that's an area I'm probably a little bit more sensitive to.
Yeah. Makes sense.
But yeah, I mean, what I will say, okay, here's what I'll say. And I think this kind of ties back into what we talked about earlier, is that really what I realized, and my kids have asked this, so I think I'm perfectly fine sharing it, is they look at their dad and they look at me and they're like, you guys are so different. And at the time I didn't really see us.
You said the same thing about your mom and your dad.
Yeah. Well, that ties into psychology, right?
You found the same dynamic that your parents were.
I'll tie that in. And that is evidence-based. I mean, we know that what we know now is that individuals will gravitate towards someone who has both positive and negative attributes of their primary caregivers. So you tend to gravitate to what's familiar, not necessarily what you should gravitate towards, but what is familiar to you. Yeah. And so, it was very, from the time that we met to the time that we got married, we were together a year. And so when my kids have asked me, their experience now is you and my dad are so different. And I've said to them, I was like, at the time, I just don't think we took as much time to get to know each other, truly know each other. It was, at the end of the day, it takes time to really understand.
Yeah.
And I would say that the demise of our relationship was our values being in misalignment, valuing different things and to different degrees.
Yeah.
And that's not to say that my values are better or that his are worse or anything like that. It's just to say that we value different things, and at the end of the day, that was where the relationship failed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was around just before that you decided to go into to help.
So we were together. I mean, we were married 10 years.
Mm.
Yeah. So it was a long time. Um, and there were lots of challenges in between, lots of hardship, lots of struggle.
Did you go back into PR here in Austin?
So I think I did so many different things trying to find my footing, but when it came down to it, I didn't have any connections here. We didn't have any family. We had no support system. We came to Miami, like his family is from South America. My family's in Michigan.
Yeah.
We had no one.
You
We
had to
had to
like
develop,
start
we
everything
had to
from
start everything
scratch.
from scratch.
Yeah.
And when you don't have a support system, it is so hard.
Yeah.
And at this point, like, I was spending a lot of time with my kids. I was stepping into that role of motherhood. And I started to get further and further away from what felt like an industry that was just so rapidly changing, and I was not keeping up.
Yeah.
And you think about like then social media. And I remember when I
Oh my
left
God.
Miami, like,
Yeah.
then you see like Facebook and then the text, like then social media is emerging, right? And there's all these things. I remember like being a stay-at-home mom for periods, and I dabbled in different things, but it was like I could never decide between like, am I going to be all this? Am I going to be all stay-at-home or all? So we had
Mm.
support at different times, and I had some great caretakers, some great nannies that were like second moms to me. I needed that. Like, I didn't have my mom right there. My family's in Michigan.
Yeah.
His family's in South America. So it was like we really just didn't, we had to build a community from the ground up.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I started to lose confidence in the area of like, could I ever get back to PR or advertising? Like it's been, 4 or 5 years at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And then, yeah, at one point I started a business. I worked in outside sales for a little bit. I dabbled in so many different things trying to find my footing and
Trying to find your way.
yeah, and I felt like something for me was it was really difficult for me to feel like my contribution was being valued because I looked at it from like this idea of my value being attached to like bringing in an income and feeling like it wasn't, I don't know, that was hard for me, I think. I don't know why. Maybe from a place of fear, feeling like, I mean, one thing I learned from my mom, and I think that the intention and why she pushed this was definitely for her, I think, coming from a place of fear and what she'd experienced, where it was like, you gotta be able to stand on your own 2 feet always.
Mm-hmm.
Which,
Independence.
yeah, this hyper kind of independence, but that was also coming from like a fear-based
Fear.
place of
Yep.
like, okay, where is this?
Yep.
What if this breaks down? What am I gonna do? So there's always in the back of my head this feeling like if something breaks down, and I don't know, even if my marriage was healthier or looked healthier in different ways, then would I still have experienced that? I think so, to a degree, because that's how I experienced that reality. It was like, well,
That was what you got from your childhood.
that was what I took from my childhood.
Probably observing your mom and the way
Yeah,
that
and I think also just coming from a family where your parents do get divorced,
Yeah.
like there's always a sense of feeling like, what if? What if though?
What if
Yeah.
though?
What if you have to provide for yourself and your kids? What if something breaks down? What are you going to do? So there's always this sense of like, I have to have something.
And the universe kind of gave you that, huh? When you got divorced, you had to provide for yourself and the kids.
Yeah, I mean, and I had a lot of help. I mean, we definitely had arrangements that helped me get through school and provided for me and that, and I'm super grateful for that.
Mhm.
Um, I'm sure that there's ways we both would have liked that to look different, but I was able to get through school. At times, there was times I didn't know how I was going to get there, but I remember just feeling like the one thing that I would say with my personality is like, it was just grit. It was sort of like,